I convene the June 18th, 2025 regular board meeting to order at 7 p.m. Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swistek.
Here.
Vanessa Berry.
Here.
Debbie Bryan.
Here.
Josh Martin.
Here.
Karen Larson.
Here.
Laura Paley.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2 is opportunity for visitors to speak. Public comments is for the general public to address the board. Each person will have up to 5 minutes to provide public comment. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 3, which is the presidential appointment of library standing committees. A reminder that the president is an ex officio voting member on all committees, and the director and assistant director are ex officio non-voting members on all committees. Thank you to the trustees who sent me their preferences. We have 3 standing committees, and to ensure we have quorums, a trustee may be placed on 2 committees. With that, for the Personnel and Policy Committee, I've appointed Vice President Berry as chair, with Trustee Larson and Trustee Paley as members. For the Finance Committee, I've appointed Treasurer Bryan as chair, with Secretary Martin and Trustee Sullivan as members. And for the Physical Plant Committee, I've appointed Secretary Martin as chair, with Vice President Berry, Trustee Larson, and Trustee Sullivan as members. So we'll have meetings scheduled in the future for those.
And I can send a follow-up with everybody on them, so we're all aware.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is the presidential appointment to review fiscal year 24-25 board minutes. This is a requirement for state reporting. Each year, the library has 2 trustees review minutes to ensure that they are all signed and to ensure the minutes appropriately reflect the year. For this ad hoc committee, I appoint our newest member, Trustee Paley, and I will appoint myself as the supplemental trustee. The director will arrange for these reviews to occur before the next board meeting. Agenda item number 5 acknowledges that Vice President Berry and Treasurer Bryan review the May billings in June, and that Trustee Larson and Trustee Sullivan will review the June billings in July. As previously mentioned, the board president will train our new trustee on bill review process or designate a veteran trustee to do so, depending on trustee schedules. Agenda item number 6 is the consent agenda. Is there a trustee who wishes to pull something from the consent agenda? If not, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes of the May 21st, 2025 board meeting and the acknowledgement of the May 31st, 2025 treasurer's report, investment activity report, current asset report, revenue report, expense report, and the authorization of the June 18th, 2025 payment of bills.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Emily Swistek.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Paley.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 7 is unfinished business. 7A is capital improvement project with 2 subsections. 7A1 is the HVAC project status update and the Kingston Lot development update. 7A2 is an action item. Let's discuss 7A1 first. Mark, can you please update the board and then we can consider action on 7A2, please.
Sure. So just to give a quick update on the active projects that are going on right now. The BES update, you're still having some ongoing troubleshooting going on. We actually have a meeting scheduled for Friday this week to go through those issues and try to get to a resolution on them. That's the one bit of, I'll call it frustration for the library and trying to get that through. The HVAC project is on track. It's been, obviously everything's getting hooked up and in place. It's getting the controls in place to marry up to those HVACs. That is just the last nagging part of it. Are there any questions on that before I jump into the more discussion topic?
What are the issues with the BAS system?
Not to get too technical, but if you've got a whole bunch of controls in a line, they're supposed to be, what we're being told, is the communication line that goes between all those controls is supposed to be one big loop. What's not supposed to happen is called a T-tap, where in that loop, at some point in time, could be 20 years ago, someone made a connection into that loop and went to a dead end. And so it creates a power issue where it's not a power balance in the wire. What we're trying to figure out is is it something that is pre-existing that they just haven't been able to find? Is it something that has been an issue of 2 months of troubleshooting? Why have they not been able to find it? So we're trying to get all that information on Friday. But that's what we're being told as of right now. There's 3 T-taps. They found one of them for sure. They can't find the other 2. And it could be anywhere in the building. Now they've also tried to hand over hand, as they call it, search for those. So they see a wire here and they continue following it, but obviously it goes behind walls, in ceilings, wherever else. These are not wires that were installed as part of the renovation project, but we do need to confirm that. I mean, I've asked for an as-built of exactly where. The big renovation project that happened a couple of years ago basically reused a lot of the existing controls at that point in time, so we didn't replace all the wiring. But I do want to find out wherever these T-taps are suspected to be, is it in areas of major renovation or not? Can we access it or not and actually get into more weeds with it? So, anything else on that? That's a good question.
Thank you for asking that question, Karen.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mark on that topic?
Doesn't affect the charges, correct? That was a flat fee for that?
It was a flat fee, but the last time, so for months and months and months, no, we're gonna spend all our time troubleshooting it and doing it ourselves. No issue. Last week, Friday, was the first time I started hearing grumbling that, hey, if we have to go replace wiring, who's doing that? So that's where I then asked for a meeting early this week, however the guy was traveling.
Okay.
Which is why it's on Friday.
Okay.
As soon as money was asked for, it was okay, no.
Yeah,
If someone's willing to go and troubleshoot without asking the library for money, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt as soon as that comes into the equation.
Yep.
Any other questions on that topic for Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's move on to,
Still 1A,
Yep.
or A1, sorry.
we're still on A1.
The discussion part for, or at least the presentation part from my end, just to give a very high-level overview of what you're being asked to consider today, is we did go out and get proposals from multiple firms for preliminary design. And I'll call it preliminary because it's schematic design, so it's basically what could be a plan to go forward with. You need that to get a little bit more into the engineering, a little bit more finite and fine-tuned cost information to then decide, do we want to move forward with this or not? So we received 4 proposals. We asked 5 companies, received 4 proposals, reviewed them with the committee 2 weeks ago, say the 6-4. Essentially it boiled down to 2 firms from what CCS reviewed. It was Terra Engineering, who was the lowest firm who was being recommended, and then Erickson Engineering. Erickson Engineering was the second lowest. There was a decent gap between the 2, but Erickson Engineering was the civil engineer from the main renovation projects a few years ago. So we wanted to throw that back and forth. CCS is currently and has worked with Terra in the past. We also are currently working with Erickson too in other projects. Both firms have done great work. I don't have any issues with them. Following the committee meeting, did reach out to their principal, did find out that the main point of contact, Kevin, who worked in this project with us, did own his own firm and has worked in Lisle before, is familiar with the Park District as well as the Public Works Department. So there's some familiarity there when he had owned his own firm. We think it's a prudent first step to invest some money into what is the plan to then get a better cost understanding to then decide what to do forward, move forward. And you can obviously curtail things as you go in that process. The one other piece that was called out here in $16,294 that's in a report that's broken into 3 different buckets. One is the design services, 2 is the surveying, and 3 is a reimbursable expenses allowance. So if you don't use all of the allowance, that's not all spent. But why I'm bringing that up is the surveying piece. Eventually, if you're moving forward with the project on that lot, you will need to do surveying. It's a matter, do you need to do it? Absolutely, right now for this phase, maybe not. You're going to need to do it at some point anyways, and you're going to get better cost information if we do it now, when we do an estimate your services for what the design ends up being, if you do it now versus later. And that is a decision point that the library can make though. Any questions or discussion there?
Okay. Then agenda item 7A2 is we need a motion and a second.
I move to,
Go ahead.
I move to contract with Terra Engineering for the Kingston lot design, survey and reimbursables in the amount of $16,294.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Emily Swister.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Ryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark.
All right, everyone stay dry tonight.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 8 is committee reports. 8A is finance. Any reports?
Nothing to report at this time.
8B, personnel and policy.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, C, physical plant.
We did meet and we've just discussed the outcome of that meeting. So we'll continue that in committee.
Thank you. And D, strategic planning. We should all have on our calendars Monday, June 23rd, 7 p.m. is our next strategic planning committee meeting. Did you have anything to add to that, Dr. Weinstein, or no? Is it-
No.
Okay, all right, good. So we'll look forward to that meeting on Monday. All right, agenda item number 9 is staff reports. 9A is the director's report. Dr. Weinstein.
Okay, I will start off with the Hokusai exhibit launch on May 24th. On Main Street, the Hokusai exhibit was open to the public and Mayor Mullen started us off. And then the art museum director at the College of DuPage, Diana Martinez, talked about the COD exhibit. Artist Richard Lowe spoke about his interpretation of the fountain on Main Street. And then I was asked to speak about the library's participation in the Hokusai event in full. And I mentioned the volunteer art project, our collection of materials that complement the COD exhibit, the summer read kickoff party that had Hokusai themes, as well as the Hokusai art lecture that we just had here at the library. And then I just wrapped up to make sure that the community knew that the library was very much enjoyed being a part of this project, and wanted to make sure that everybody understood that as an institution of information learning and culture that we're always welcome. We would always welcome this type of project and partnership with the village. Next, just as a mention of about Trustee Paley's orientation for the record, Trustee Paley met with Library Attorney Roger Ritzman and myself on May 22nd to discuss OMA and FOIA and board protocol and other legal matters. And after Roger left, I provided a tour of the facility for Laura, and she also received her Illinois Standards Manual, our policy manual, as well as the library laws and rules handbook. So you're all ready and very informed. Yes. So she's also received her key card, so now she can access the admin area. And while we toured, Laura also got a chance to meet some of the staff along the way, so that was nice.
I did.
And she saw not only the public floor, but the behind the scenes stuff too, so that was fun. Next is the JRB, the Joint Review Board. I know we're discussing this in full down the agenda very soon. All I'll say here for the record is that at the previous JRB meeting, an additional meeting was scheduled due to concerns about the proposed East Ogden TIF, and a majority of the affected taxing bodies voted the TIF down. I have spoken with the library's attorney on this matter to discuss our position and to understand the potential impacts to our district residents. And we also know that there's more TIFs coming. So the library, speaking of which, the library received a 106-page document recently, and it was forwarded to the board. We received it on June 11th, and then you received it in the morning on June 12th. So there's more to discuss very soon. We'll get to that. On to more fun topics. The summer read kickoff party was a wonderful success. Approximately 550 patrons attended and really enjoyed the foam pit, the corn dog truck, the live music, the book recommendations, our Hokusai mosaic art project, which is now hanging in youth services. So if you want to take a look at it, it's excellent. And also our photo booth that was also Hokusai inspired. I just want to thank the library's event team. Will led that team, so I thank him for his efforts, as well as all the staff who were in attendance that day. They made everything happen. It takes a lot. I also thank the trustees who came, and Police Chief Rodriguez. He also swung by, which was great. So there's some really nice photos on our socials if you want to take a look. And I know I've got a little bit more. And just lastly, since you all look so lovely in your summery t-shirts, you will have another opportunity to don them at the 4th of July parade if you so choose. So every year the library participates in the 4th of July parade. We walk down Main Street, we pass out candies, we're there with the village, the park district, and other local organizations. It's a great time. So we invite all the trustees to come, and if you're interested, please email me. More details to come via email, but generally we start at 10 a.m. at the junior high, and we all walk together in a line. And it's a pretty quick thing, but wear comfortable shoes, wear cool clothes, wear your great t-shirt. And again, just let me know if you're going to attend so I know who's coming. And then just lastly, I wanted to thank Lisle Women's Club member Louisa Bueller. She gifted me with a very sweet floral arrangement. She wanted to thank me for the work on the hokusai and mentioning the Lisle Women's Club at the event. So, and I also wanted to just thank all of the Women's Club members who participated. They were very willing to participate in the art volunteer project, so thank you to the Lisle Women's Club. So that's my report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the director?
Just one, the next JRB meeting is June 19th. What time is that?
It has been canceled, and I'll have
Oh.
more information on that.
Oh,
Okay,
The plot thickens.
huh. I did not realize that was canceled. It was supposed to be 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm happy that it's not.
Okay, any other questions for the director at this point? Okay, then moving on to the assistant director's report.
All right, so physical plant met, as was discussed by Mark. Some of the other fun stuff we talked about that I was taking more immediate action on. The window tinting on the south side of the second level and the masonry work above this, basically straight above us on the roof. Both of those jobs are scheduled for early July, so they'll be happening soon. As Tatiana mentioned, summary kickoff went great. Staff did an excellent job of not only planning, but facilitating every part of the event. So thank you to all the hard work they did. Taylor Plumbing was in the building during our backflow testing. Yes, thank you. The annual testing. They noticed a couple deficiencies with like the tertiary backup on the backflow. So they came out and repaired it. All is well now. So we're back in good working order. The partition, we do maintenance every May, right before summer read, because that is when we take a programming break. So there's often that's the slowest time that these rooms are used, especially in the mornings. We have about a week or two right before kickoff where staff really focus on that. And then we just actually have the time to have the room available for 4 hours to get that done. So that was done right before summer read kickoff. I met with EcoClean to do a full walkthrough with the cleaning crew supervisor and the crew about expectations for cleaning now that the new contract has come up, and that they are aware they are on a 6-month period with the current contract. So fingers crossed we get the service that we expect and we can move forward past that point. And then finally, OneSource has been out a myriad number of times. We are at the point now where we have 3 new units in and functioning. The last 4th one controls the cooling on this level, and they just finished the second to last stage to be up and running. So the hope is that by tomorrow afternoon, we have cooling across the whole building. And the final, all 4 new condensers will be piped in and running as intended. Knock on wood.
We got some heat coming.
Yeah. And that's all I got.
Great.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the assistant director? Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Agenda item number 10 is new business. 10A is to adopt resolution R25-03 for Lisle Library District Board members. May I have a motion and a second, and then the director can provide an explanation.
I move to adopt resolution 25-03 for the Lisle Library District Board members, a true and correct list of current library board members.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein?
Well, this is pretty self-explanatory. We just have to let the public know who you are.
Good.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, roll call please.
Emily Swissair.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryant.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. 10B is to adopt ordinance O25-01, an ordinance authorizing non-resident cards. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to adopt ordinance 25-01, authorizing non-residence cards, an annual ordinance authorizing public library non-resident cards by the tax bill method.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Director Weinstein, can you explain that, please?
I can. I'm gonna read from what's on our website so people understand fully. A resident of an area that's not served by any other public library can obtain a library card through the payment of an annual fee if we are the closest public library to their residence. And the fee will be proportional to the fee paid by district residents determined by what we call the tax bill method, which includes multiplying the current tax rate per DuPage County by the net taxable value of the home.
Any further discussion on that? Yes, Trustee Martin, or Secretary Martin, sorry.
Are there any areas in proximity to our district that do not have library service?
Yes.
Yes.
There's small pockets.
Yeah.
And we have
Interesting.
maybe a handful of residents who purchase a card, yes.
We're the closest, and that's not like an annexation hasn't come up for that.
I've had conversations with residents about that,
Okay.
especially one, but it hasn't moved into that.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swister.
Aye.
Vanessa
Oh,
Berry.
sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
I was right.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
you said it while I was saying aye, so I got so confused. I was like, oh
I threw you off by asking a question.
no. It's okay.
Can I add to
Yes.
Sure.
Go ahead. Before we move forward, is that if someone is outside of our district boundary and they are contiguous to our line, they can annex themselves in.
Oh.
They can also poll their neighborhood if the neighborhood wants to annex it. So that is an option,
Interesting.
yes. Some people just purchase the card. It's the same money.
Sure.
It's just you have to
Exactly.
do it every year.
Right.
If you annex in, it's done for you.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's
Just
what I
like
figured.
along the line, so like it could be a house that's just across the line,
Yes.
but not the one past that.
It has to be legally contiguously not connected to, but
Adjacent.
adjacent. Thank you, yes.
Interesting.
In order to be annexed.
Yes,
And do you know what the average cost is people pay for a card?
depends on the value of it.
Okay, so is it hundreds of dollars or?
It could be
is
anywhere
yeah.
between 200 to 700.
I mean,
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay,
it's the
okay,
same
just
as
based
what we-
on the
Yeah.
house,
Yeah,
okay,
based on
okay,
your
so it's
tax
not,
bill.
yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same rate.
Interesting.
Okay,
All right.
let's go back to our roll call and
There we
start
go.
over.
All right.
Emily Swister.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. 10C is to adopt ordinance O25-02, the meeting date ordinance. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to adopt ordinance 25-02, the meeting date ordinance and annual setting of regular board meetings for the library district.
I second. Sorry.
Treasurer Bryan seconded, okay. Director Weinstein?
So this is just our annual ordinance of dates. The only anomaly here is that the August date is earlier because we need a 30-day window for the beginning in September. That's correct, right, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swister.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. 10D is to adopt ordinance O25-03, the transfer of funds to the special reserve fund. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to adopt ordinance 25-03, the transfer of funds to special reserve fund in the amount of $120,000 from the corporate fund to the special reserve fund under 75 ILCS 16/40 through 50.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein?
Okay, so this is the same as last year. The board annually determines an amount to transfer to our special reserve fund. Our working budget that we just looked at last month included this $120,000 transfer. And this ordinance supports the action to save for upcoming projects.
Any further discussion on this? Okay, Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swissair.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. 10E is to approve the library's fiscal year 2025-26 working budget. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the annual LLD working budget for the fiscal year 2025-26.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein?
Yes, so there have been no adjustments to this draft since last month. The same overview sheet was included in the packets, and these people didn't see last month's packet, it's the same information.
Is there any further discussion on that? Questions for the director?
There's just a question, the postage, is that for the newsletter?
It's for anything we mail out.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, do we do a lot of mailing? I mean, it seemed like it was high, I mean, I know postage is high, I was just curious.
It's for newsletter, it's for when we send ILLs out, if we have to mail them out.
Oh, okay.
It's for letters, I know Jackie sends things out.
Mhm.
Say it again.
Bills.
Bills.
Oh, we don't pay them electronically?
Not all of them.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious, yeah.
Any other further discussions? Okay. Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swissair.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, thank you. 10F is to approve Juneteenth as an LLD floating holiday. May I have a motion and a second? And then the director will provide an explanation.
I move to approve Juneteenth, which falls on June 19th, as an LLD floating holiday beginning in year 25 to 26.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Director Weinstein?
Yes, so Juneteenth became a federal holiday in 2021. And since it's a federal holiday, it would allow full-time staff to take a paid day off during the month of June, like our other floating holidays like Martin Luther King Day, Veterans Day, when the library remains open. So if this is passed tonight, it would go to the Personnel and Policy Committee where they would just add it to our policy on floating holidays.
Any questions on that? Okay, Jackie, please call the roll.
Emily Swissair.
Aye.
Vanessa Berry.
Aye.
Debbie Bryan.
Aye.
Josh Martin.
Aye.
Karen Larson.
Aye.
Laura Bailey.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. 10G is an item discussing the Village of Lisle TIFs and to reach board consensus on this topic. 2 TIFs are on the agenda under A and B. The director has a presentation for the board for discussion purposes. After the presentation, trustees should be prepared to openly discuss the prospect of TIFs and hopefully come to a consensus on the topic so that we can provide direction for the director to vote at the next JRB meeting.
Okay.
And with that, Director Weinstein.
Alright, I'm gonna set up our projector. So, on. Lower the lights, so it's easy. Got two down? That's okay. Okay, so I want to first begin by stating that though I've consulted with the library's attorney and with the village and with my intergovernmental colleagues on everything TIF, I want to be clear that I nor the library are TIF authorities, as well as that any TIF that is enacted in Lisle is a village effort, and that the library is simply one advisory member on the joint review board. And the the information in this presentation comes from my discussions with our attorney, as well as with my intergovernmental peers and via information that you can find publicly on the internet. I have citations in this presentation, and I have copies for everybody too. So, Will, can you help me on that side of the world?
Yes.
Thank
One.
you. Thank you. Great. So after those disclosures, we can begin. And I'm going to go slow because some of this stuff is hard to understand. Took me a while too. Okay. So the first and second slides come from a University of Illinois Great Cities Institute article. I've provided the parenthetical additions to make it more relevant to Lisle. It offers a good definition of TIFs and how they're used. I'm going to read through the points, so bear with me, but after reading through the jargon, and I use that term very lovingly, I'm going to break it down and deconstruct it so that it hopefully makes sense and it relates to our unit of local government, the library. So here it says tax increment financing is a tool that local governments like the village use for financing physical and economic development. A village designates an area for improvement and drafts a redevelopment plan of improvements it expects to see take place within the boundaries of a TIF. The village subsidizes developers to make these improvements through different funding techniques such as pay-as-you-go funding or bond issuances. The property values in the area rise and taxes there increase. The village uses the growth in property tax revenues to pay off the initial and ongoing development expenditures. Once a TIF is designated, the value of all of the parcels of properties within its boundaries are determined and added up. The cumulative value of all parcels at the moment of TIF designation is known as the base value or the initial assessed value. The base value is the amount that will form the baseline for the TIF and will be used to measure incremental property taxes as redevelopment occurs. The base value is frozen during the lifespan of a TIF. Just a little more. The difference between the base value and the new assessed value is called the tax increment. These funds go to the village where they are used to finance any debt it took on when making improvements. Property tax revenues generated within a TIF are unavailable to overlapping jurisdictions for the lifespan of the TIF. Overlapping jurisdictions may be county governments, schools, library districts, or other special purpose districts with jurisdiction over property in this area. This means that the amount of revenue for these taxing bodies from property in a TIF will remain the same for 23 years, even if there's a demand for services to increase. Overlapping jurisdictions such as school districts or a library may choose to raise their tax rates to pay for the loss of a portion of their tax base and or increased demand for expenditures due to a TIF. In this case, if this is the case, TIF may not negatively affect the budgets of other taxing bodies as much as, and this is the important part, it shifts the burden of financing local services to the property owners in the entire municipality. In other words, all taxpayers pay more for local services when overlapping jurisdictions share their tax base with TIFs because the different taxing jurisdictions are forced to max out their tax rates. Now, this is written for a city. We are tax capped, so there's a little bit of difference there, but I just wanted to read this because it gave a good overview. So we'll move to the next. So how does a TIF affect district residents? So this slide is a bit of a reiteration, but I think it does provide more clarification. So in a TIF, the EAV, as mentioned before, is frozen within TIF boundaries. The tax rate, however, remains the same for all properties in a taxing body's district. So in a TIF, the county will calculate that frozen EAV and the tax rate to determine the allocation of funds to the taxing bodies. In the TIF, when a property value increases within its boundaries, it generates additional tax revenue above that frozen baseline, and that additional revenue, that increment, is captured by the village to fund projects within the TIF. So taxing bodies like the library, fire, schools, and park will annually levy for the funds they need to operate. We all do that. The TIF does not directly affect a taxing body's operating budget. However, it indirectly shifts the burden of funding operations disproportionately to the property owners outside of a TIF. And TIFs in Illinois may last up to 23 years. Okay, so the next slide is, I know it's a lot to digest. About revenues now to the taxing bodies. So the library and other taxing bodies levy property taxes each year to operate, we know that. The library primarily relies on property taxes as its main source of revenue as a public service agency. So we don't have sales tax here, we don't charge extra fees for programs or services, and we have a minimal charge for like paper copies. And the library cannot levy more than our B&A, that's in a statute. So the county will not extend beyond CPI. So as mentioned before, we are tax capped, and PTEL limits increases in tax extensions to the lesser of 5% or the percentage increase in CPI for the preceding year, okay? So how does the library actually receive funds via the county? We create our levy, asking for a total amount from the county. The county then uses a combination of the tax rate, the EAV, and new property to calculate our tax extension. So understanding that we cannot levy beyond our B&A, we create our levy and we generally receive what we ask for in levy dollars every year from the county. So if the library, let's say, asks for $4 million from the county, we will generally receive $4 million from the county from all taxpayers in the Lisle Library District, and that includes the TIF properties, but it's via different distribution from the residents. Okay. So, this slide shows the village and library district populations, and so the village of Lisle is in the Richmond district, shows up here in the pentagon shape. And as we all know, the areas in yellow include the Meadows residents, the Steeple Road residents, and then smaller pockets of residents around here. Now, I am using simple shapes here. This is not to scale. It does not mimic the boundaries that we have. I'm just indicating the different shapes here to show the differences in borders, and you'll see similar comparisons in upcoming slides. Again, not to scale, but I think it's graphically important to show the differences in boundaries here. Okay, so this slide really tells the story for Lisle Library District taxpayers. Again, the pentagon is the library district. The red shape is representing a TIF. Okay, so let's say that's the East Ogden TIF. So that red square upper right-hand corner, I'm going to read it to you. The TIF property owners pay taxes to the taxing bodies just as owners outside of the TIF. However, the allocations are reduced to the taxing bodies due to their frozen EAV, and in turn, indirectly increase taxes on the owners outside of the TIF. The calculated increment, however, goes to the village TIF fund. So, if you look at the left part of the screen there, everyone outside of the red TIF area, their increased EAV is calculated with the tax rate set by the county, and that goes to the library. The library is going to receive taxes from the properties within the TIF, but at a lower percentage than from those outside of the TIF. The money generated by the increment, again, goes to the village, and that goes to the village TIF fund, and funds from that fund can only be used within that red TIF square. So I'm going to reiterate again, the next slide is going to break it down even further just to describe more. I needed this, added stuff, so I'm hoping this helps. Okay, so you see here, this is the library district, and then you see the TIF within the district. The taxing body, the library, drafts a levy for, say, $4 million, and we ask that from the county. The county is then charged with calculating our levy request by looking at our entire district and doing the property calculations for all areas within our district, including any TIFs. So that is here. And then the county issues the library its property tax extension, which generally, give or take a few dollars, matches what we ask for, as I mentioned before. Now I'm going to complicate things a little bit. So you can see how not just the library is part of this equation, but the other overlapping taxing districts are also involved in a resident's property tax bill on the next slide here. So from this to this, so what I just described goes for every district touched by the TIF where the EAV is frozen. So like the village, the school, the park, and the fire, and there are others, there's the county, there's the township, but I'm just using these so I wouldn't, go crazy with a bunch of shapes, but just for simplicity's sake here. The county is charged with the same calculation for all the taxing bodies, and that is how all of our property tax bills are generated. So I didn't put in any numbers, but you can see that a lot of the other taxing bodies extend beyond the village boundaries, some extend beyond the library boundaries, and again, this is not to scale, it's just to show you that there are differing boundaries. Okay. So next I want to lay out the options that the village has and what you will need to think about when I am asked for an opinion about or for a vote on the TIF. Okay, so the potential options here for the village and our GRB opinions. So, well, first the village could decide to do nothing. They could just say, please take a vote. But in the spirit of intergovernmental cooperation, the village could reduce the size of the TIF to the strictly blighted areas and areas adjacent to the blighted areas, which would be less of a burden on residents outside of the TIF boundary. And then secondly, the village could offer all taxing bodies an annual surplus to either be used by the taxing body or to be evaded back to residents via the county. And it's important to note that it would be dependent on each taxing body to make that decision to abate. So, moving on. Right now, we have a TIF on the table, which is the East Ogden TIF, but we also have a Route 53 TIF. We may have another Family Square TIF, and I don't know if there's anything else on the docket. So those are just things to consider as the frozen EAVs and any TIF will affect the taxing bodies by relying on the residents outside of the TIF boundaries to fund the levies that we need to operate. It will be in a disproportionate way. We'll go back to slides if we need to for discussion purposes. So I'm not going to read this all, don't worry. But the next slide is an excerpt from the TIF statute. The board received this in an email with the other TIF documentation. I'm just going to mention the important things to note about the JRB's duty. So the JRB will review the public record, the planning documents, and the ordinances approving a redevelopment plan and project and any proposed amendments. A JRB's recommendation shall be advisory and non-binding, we know that, and that we are to base our recommendation to approve or disapprove of the redevelopment plan on the basis of the redevelopment project area, the plan, satisfying the plan requirements, and the eligibility criteria in the TIF Act. And then lastly, if the JRB recommends rejection of the matters before it, the municipality will have 30 days within which to resubmit the plan or amend it. And during this period, the municipality will meet and confer with the JRB and attempt to resolve the issues set forth in the JRB report that led to the rejection of the plan or amendment. We've already done that once, we rejected it once, but it looks like from this excerpt, we could continue to amend the plan if the majority choose to do so. Okay, last slide, we can move on. So, we need to talk about the but-for test. But first, I have some dates here I want to talk about, and this was already brought up at our meeting. So our East Ogden TIF vote is scheduled for Wednesday, June 25th at 3 p.m. And we were to have a meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m., but that was canceled as of yesterday at 1:30. The Route 53 TIF presentation with the option to vote will be on the same date as the East Ogden TIF on Thursday, June 25th at 3:30 p.m. So, back to the but-for test. So the board received the PowerPoint from the last JRB meeting, and in that PowerPoint it laid out the but-for criteria for the East Ogden TIF. Well, to reiterate, a but-for test basically asks taxing bodies, would development occur without the use of a TIF? If the answer is no, then the but for is satisfied. If the answer is yes, then the TIF is not necessary. And again, that's for you to decide. The Minnesota here, sorry. The Minnesota House of Representatives also had a nice definition. So it says, what is the purpose of a but-for test? It's to prevent excessive use of a TIF, i.e. to prevent unnecessary use of a TIF. If a development would have been done anyway, why should a TIF be used to assist it? Or to protect the interests of overlapping governmental units, typically county and school districts and libraries. If authorities use TIF for developments that would be built anyway, TIF diverts tax revenue from the county and school to the development authority and city. And then we finally arrive to the point in the slideshow here where the board needs to think about how to answer these questions about voting on the East Ogden TIF and how we posture ourselves on the upcoming TIFs like the Route 53 TIF. So we can draft an opinion and you give me a consensus to vote, or we can just vote. If we do draft an opinion, we can do something like the Lisle Library District understands that the JRB has an obligation to provide an advisory recommendation on any proposed TIF using the criteria as laid out in the statute, and then the library district says this. So that's where we're at. We can go back to any slide, but that's my presentation. And I know I went kind of quick. I'm glad you have a copy in front of you, but we should probably discuss, and we can turn on the lights because I have a copy of this myself and talk about things.
Thank you first, before we start the discussion, thank you so much for preparing this for the board and presenting it to us in this way. I know when I met with you, I don't know if it was earlier this week or last week, whenever it was, and you showed me your sketch, I said that was, I thought that was really important to show that, and so that we can see the different boundaries, because knowing that the other taxing bodies, how they're impacted, and how there are people that live in these other districts that are overlapping but aren't part of the village or aren't part of, what the district, whatever it is, it's really helpful to know that and to really realize the implications that it has on the people that are outside of the TIF. So first of all, thank you for that. Does anyone have anything? Liz, you look like you wanted to ask something right away.
Yeah, just to clarify, on the last slide that you put up, the but-for test and LLD opinion, the Thursday, do you mean June 26th at 3:30? Because you said that the East Ogden TIF vote was gonna be Wednesday, June 25th at 3.
Oh, yes.
So that's just a typo of
Yes,
date.
it's just a typo, sorry.
So
So
it's the 26th, okay.
So is it a different day or?
No, I'm
following?
It's all on the
it's
same
day.
day.
Got it.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so they're gonna vote at
Wednesday.
3 and then again at 3:30.
Yes.
Okay.
But they haven't
But
even
the-
discussed the second one.
And-
So I was told, so we'll take it one by one. So I did discuss this with the village manager, and I asked, are we voting on the Route 53? Because we haven't even had a presentation by the
Yeah,
TIF consultant. And he said, the agenda will include an option to vote. And I said, does this mean I need a position?
Yeah.
And he said, well, if everybody wants to vote, who's on the JRB wants to vote, there will be a vote. So that is the answer.
Okay.
So I have a feeling there probably won't be a full vote because we haven't had the presentation. And I think this will mirror the East Ogden thing. The way we were presented with the East Ogden, there was not a vote there, and then we had to schedule another vote. So that's my guess, my best guess.
Why does it say may last up to 23 years? I thought it was mandatory.
The statute indicates it can only be up to 23 years. However, there is like a loophole to extend for 12 more.
Sorry, I mean, it can't be shorter than
It
23.
can,
It
yeah.
can.
Yeah, yeah,
If
the
the
UTI one
development-
is ending this year,
Yeah, if the development, and again, I don't know all the details, but if the development can fulfill all of the village's requirements and expectations, and they've utilized their TIF funds properly and they're done, like at year 20, that can end the TIF.
Okay, but it has to fulfill, you cannot start with a TIF that lasts 10 years. 23 is the statutory
Yes,
minimum.
yes,
It can be fulfilled earlier.
yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
So, just to talk through this, like originally I thought that like the library would be losing money, but the correct way to think about it is we will get the amount of money that we ask the county for, but
Period.
instead of being spread out amongst everyone, it gets evenly, that TIF gets taxed less, so everyone else gets taxed more.
Yes.
And the issue I'm having with it is that all those people outside the boundary did not vote in the village.
Yes.
Is there a chance that it will be reduced at the county? You say we typically get 4 million, but is there a chance that this TIF plus the others, that they would then not levy the full amount and say,
No.
you're only getting 3.8 because it goes too far in the taxpayers?
No, because,
Okay.
the county doesn't do that. We ask for 4 million, the county does the calculations, and it's going to mostly come from these two areas.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
and they will raise taxes here to give the taxing bodies what they need.
So our cap on our levy is CPI,
Yes.
but, or 5%, whichever is lesser.
Mhm.
But because of that just sets our budget, the county is then responsible to levy that amount, and they may see an increase above CPI if that's what's required to get to that levy that we've set. An individual taxpayer.
Say it again.
So if we are holding all of the properties in the TIF at the current rate, and we have taxed at CPI, for instance, because we cannot increase our tax burden on the TIF, those outside of the TIF will see a tax increase
Yes.
above CPI.
For themselves, yeah.
For themselves, yes. So important for constituents because
And
They
people
may
like
see
me who live outside of the village.
people like me who live outside of the village.
Yes, you also.
People like me who live outside the
And
village.
cannot
Yep.
vote for the
Correct.
And
mayor.
the big thing is, and then you also aren't receiving the benefits
That's
of
correct.
the village, adding to those developments.
Correct. Do they project, and I did not see this in either presentation, a projected EAV increase for properties adjacent but not in the TIF? Because there is the possibility, rising tide lifts all boats, property values increase even though they're not inside the TIF, so they are paying the same percentage, but we're getting a higher revenue from them. Increment, okay, that's, all right.
I think
D-
it's
deeper
kind of,
question.
a speculation at this point that you would hope that could be,
Yes,
it's so tricky. I mean, we're not getting a ton of money right now from this blighted district.
that's true.
So, I mean, we need every penny that we have, so it's a tricky situation, but it's not like it's taking this, really, prosperous area and restricting, and, I mean, we have a chance of benefiting. We have been getting surplus funds every year from the two TIF districts that are currently part. I mean, we got, $30,000, I believe, this year from Navistar. And I think it was like about 100 from UTI. Yeah, so there's always, so we do get surplus if there is. Again, nobody knows for sure what that could look like, but the village has had good faith in paying, when they can back to us. So something to consider, when
Yeah.
looking at it. It's hard when you look at the if but test. We don't know if we don't do anything, if we don't have a TIF, will somebody still want to develop? There's been people nosing around at some points, but are they doing that because the village is promising a TIF? We don't know, and that's not on us to decide, but it's tricky. There's a risk to be taken.
So-
Has anybody asked them, and I don't even know who you asked this question of, I guess the village, whoever on the village put together the properties that were put in the TIF. It's quite unusual to have businesses that are successful put in the TIF. At least that's been my experience.
So
Has anybody asked why
Yes.
successful ongoing businesses were put in a TIF?
Yeah.
from what I understand, they need the tax revenue from outside. Like if you're talking about like lock former,
Mm-hmm.
like the taxes, like there's nobody paying those property taxes, the building's empty. So you need the taxes from everyone around that to have enough to actually make improvements to the area.
Right, for the infrastructure,
Yeah.
so that's why they have chosen to have some viable businesses in there.
I'll be honest, I didn't read all 160 pages, okay, so I'll
No,
just be
Liz,
honest.
me
No,
neither.
no,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
I read a lot of
Do
it.
we understand anything, and again, I didn't read it all, about what kind of improvements are required?
So
Go ahead.
from the East Ogden, mostly what they discussed was dilapidated, condemned, and undervalued buildings that are not seeing the normal growth and assessed value year over year, trying to bring them up to a point where they would see tax growth, because it's essentially they're not suitable investments, and they're not good buildings, good properties, or up to code. So there's no incremental tax increases there anyway. So Debbie, to your point there, they're blighted areas. So it's not like we're missing out on taxes because it goes into the TIF, because without the TIF, you're not gonna see those property values increase anyways.
But when you talk about the active businesses, we would, I mean, again,
Right.
it's like a double-edged sword, we would see those. So that was brought up at the JRB meeting, a couple of taxing bodies brought up the fact that, you know, they would be more supportive if it was on the truly blighted areas and maybe some adjacent properties. And then the village used their funds to work with the other businesses and maybe the streetscaping and the lighting, and using their funds to improve those areas instead of relying on a TIF, which is much larger, which impacts our residents and every other taxing body's residents outside of the TIF.
I mean, if you take a look at buying a house in Lisle, and for that same money you buy a house in Naperville, I mean, or Downers, your taxes are already higher in Lisle. And by putting on additional, like really high tax burden on Lisle residents, I mean, I'm no tax expert, but that doesn't feel good to me as a resident.
I'm more concerned with the proliferation. If there is gonna be another family square, and we've got this North Lincoln 53 TIF potentially, one, maybe two, but if we're gonna continue to do this, then you're starting to pull out all of that commercial value. Like, I get what you're saying about Warrenville Road, those are
Right.
very effective, big commercial businesses, but if anybody actually read the North 53, that TIF makes no sense whatsoever. It's the Hyatt, it's a couple of car dealerships, and all of the abandoned housing. Like, why do we need a TIF to bring it up to code? And that's primarily what they're talking about, is improper stormwater infrastructure, which is not the purpose of a TIF as far as I'm aware. You can't put half of it as the retention pond next to the Hyatt.
Right, I was gonna say
What are you
there's
gonna
around,
put there?
yeah, I think they almost said it's becoming a wetland that might not be able to be.
Which, I mean, if that's the case,
Developed
that's
over
not
there,
really, I don't think that's a matter for a TIF, so I'm,
Isn't that
what's that?
isn't that a floodplain?
It is a floodplain. It's significantly a
So
floodplain. I used to
why?
live there. It's ridiculous, and it's not. Sure, should something be done about it? Absolutely. Should it be done through TIF? I don't think so. I'm a hard no on the North 53.
Right.
And the like the village is already working with the Army Corps of Engineers on all of that, so I'm
They
wondering
have
like
been.
why
Well,
do they need the TIF for those funds?
There's a whole
Shouldn't they
nother debacle on that one.
already
They've been
have that
working with them
budgeted?
for years.
Well,
And what
that's
has happened? Not much.
they did not want to allow the Section 8 aspect of that, which was how the Army Corps was going to support that. So that was a public housing
There must be
problem.
other grants.
There are definitely other things available there.
When you mentioned the code, I gleaned through the 106 pages, but when I saw code, that did flag me as code violations as part of this.
It seems like a village authority issue, not necessarily a TIF issue. I get it, they may not have the because they don't have EAV and their property values aren't increasing, they don't have the means to leverage their asset to improve it. But again, that seems like a grant or a, Army Corps type of thing as opposed to locking those tax values for 23 years. So,
Yeah, it's hard because on one hand, like, there are definitely properties within some of these that I could see utilizing a TIF. But I was looking through, like, the county has a list of all the TIFs in the county, and most towns have like one, maybe two, and then you've got like Glendale Heights that has 1 million, and then Lisle has more than average too, and so I don't know. Like, I feel like it's something that should be used sparingly.
Right.
Like, they write it in a way to kind of discourage them.
Well,
Right.
Glendale Heights is such a bigger
Yeah,
area
that's
than
true.
Lisle, and
Mhm.
that's like, Schaumburg or, Naperville or like going to Aurora.
Right.
I mean, their population base is so much bigger than ours.
I mean, I don't know if there's a way to do this, but I would need to see some really concrete plans for someone saying, yeah, if you do this, we'll build it tomorrow, and if you don't, we'll give you $10 million because we backed out of the agreement.
It didn't happen with Family Square.
Exactly, you
That's
put in
a-
a TIF and then you don't get development,
That,
that's
I
even
mean,
worse.
I mean, and that's prime if you're asking me. I mean, who wouldn't want to be down there, so.
And don't quote me on this, my understanding is if the TIF were to be reduced to Lock Former and adjacent properties, I believe and let's say, they're working with a developer because there's rumors that someone is interested, and they're running into walls. I believe you can add on to a TIF. I believe there's the ability to do that if you're running into problems to expand on a TIF. So that is an option, I think.
I could even justify it if it was existing commercial properties, but the fact that there's so much residential, there's means to condemn and then eminent domain and pay fair market value for it. Like, this makes no sense whatsoever.
I think those homes are almost all occupied.
I mean, you can still condemn an occupied building.
I'm not sure they wanna do that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
But
the issue
I
is
hear you.
they can't get, like, if you can't appreciate the asset, you could at least pay them out for it and then
True.
do something with it as a village. They have more resources.
You can offer that,
Right.
even without eminent domain.
And that's,
Yeah, correct, you
Yeah.
can.
and that's kind of what they're doing for some of those properties along the
Floodplain.
river, the floodplain ones.
Yeah, one by one.
Mhm.
One by one.
So, if we're talking about coming up with some kind of statement, right, or something that something that we can agree upon, are we talking about just for the East Ogden
Yeah.
TIF vote, or do we have to keep in mind the Route 53 one? Do we have to keep in mind future ones, or can we look at them each individually as they come up? I guess it depends on what the JRB says to you, right?
Well, we are a member of the JRB,
Yeah.
so it's really, we
The
can
leadership
say.
the village says.
Right.
We can say something about the East Ogden, we can say something about the Route 53 that
Okay.
we would prefer a full comprehensive presentation before making a judgment.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, is that even with whatever we say or the voting members of the JRB say, the village can still make the decision, say, well, okay, that's
This is
great,
what
that's
we're
what you think, but this is what we're doing anyway.
Right.
Yes,
So,
yes.
That's true.
I mean, the village has expressed they want to work with all the taxing parties.
Yeah.
And that's why we had a second JRB
Right.
meeting on this. Without disclosing things publicly, all the board members received the information on a potential surplus. That's another question mark for all of you, is that even on the table?
so would we be
Open
amenable to this tip
Well-
if we would get the surplus?
Would we get that instead of the surplus payout, how that we've gotten,
Yes.
so that would be
It would be
instead, so it would be more of a guaranteed amount?
It would be an annual surplus provided there's increment and a percentage of that increment. we won't disclose any percentages here, but it would be a percentage of any increment, and that might take a couple of years to generate an increment. Again, with the whole abatement thing, it's incumbent on each taxing body to do that, and I'm not 100% sure every taxing body would do that for all residents. So that's kind of they're throwing a bone, but I think that this board needs to really think about, and not specifically like East Ogden, Rock 53, Famous Square, it's just like TIFs in general. Does it make sense to support or come to the JRB with another statement about your position on TIFs?
So we know all the parcels because they gave us the parcels that would be considered for both of these TIFs. So we could theoretically deduce the amount of tax revenue we are getting from those parcels.
Can
Okay.
go, yeah, you can
So
easily
I
go
actually
to,
did
the
those
county
numbers.
and do
Did you?
the, yeah.
So from the ones on the Route 53 TIF, it was $26,800
So that's how much tax revenue we're getting for those properties.
from those properties. The amount we would get if they're predicted 39.2 million,
Yeah.
it would be 117,000. So it's a $90,000 difference.
Right, okay. So it would just mean
and
that,
that's using the like 3 or 0.3.
what did they project if they don't do the
I
TIF?
don't think they said
I'm
a
not sure.
number.
We would probably have to go back and look at previous years' growth, but I'm guessing it's
Yeah.
probably not a significant amount. So what we're talking about is offsetting maybe, this says $90,000, but that's not guaranteed if we don't
Yeah.
have the TIF. You know, if we are really aggressive and say $5,000 a year, we have to spread $5,000 across the remaining parcels in the district.
Mhm.
And then
Which I
whatever
don't
he's
think
talking
would
would
be
be too.
much for the library, but if like the school districts, yes.
That's correct.
Huge. And the fire district is huge. So we have to kind of think
Well,
globally as well as locally
Yeah.
here
Mhm.
for us.
yeah. I think that's all I would want to see is what is the projection of growth in those districts that would then need to be distributed to the other taxpayers in the district.
So I've asked for a lot of information
Okay.
over a lot of time, and some piecemeal information has come. I think right now we're at a point where you've received, everything I've gotten. I can ask more questions at the JRB, but they will want to vote on the East Ogden. And what is that vote? And do we want to make a statement about East Ogden?
What are people's thoughts about?
I really just want to know what they would project as increases in EAV and by extension tax if the TIF does not happen. Like if we just kept doing business as usual, because that's the difference in the amount of money that is going to be spread across the other taxpayers. That's it. Yeah, sure, we'll get some back at the end of 23 years, but let's at least figure out what we're asking everyone else to absorb. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, so I think, is that this?
28 to 20, is this north 53?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
percent
that
change.
table
Oh my
that they
God,
sent
it was
us
a
useful
contraction
for
from
this
2022
question?
to
I'm trying to
2023.
remember the
I
one
guess
that we
that's
could
possible.
download
So it's
and I
very
can bring it
So
with
little
me.
like,
increases.
it's,
I guess that's
okay,
a great
so
point
the
too.
percentage change over the last couple years,
It can't go down, right?
What's that?
When it's locked in, like the tax revenue can't decrease, correct?
What can't decrease?
Well, like so
The
the,
EAV can decrease.
right,
Yeah.
but how does the TIF account if for some reason in the first few years the EAV decreases?
I think they just don't get funds.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't get funded.
But does it still get levied at the same? Like,
We will levy the same.
okay.
Yes.
All right, so we don't, if the EAV decreases, we see zero impact to our revenue because
Yeah.
they wouldn't be paying any more taxes anyways.
Yeah, most EAVs do not decrease unless like the community goes really downhill.
Yeah.
So
Or it's really
in
blended.
general, EAV increases every year for
Yes.
everybody.
I only say that because there was negative EAV
Yeah,
growth
but
in
that
that
was
property.
like, that was 2020, 2021. Or wait, no.
No, it was 22 to
20
23.
Okay.
I don't know, it just seems like they're in a hurry to pass something
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
not giving everybody all the information needed to make a really sound, vote for it.
And have they exhausted all the possibilities, all the alternatives? Why are we just going TIF?
Right,
That's what that is what it seems like.
30 days, yeah.
Yeah,
That
why?
has been brought up multiple times.
Yeah.
I will say, many communities use TIFs. They are I hate using the word easy, but they are a very useful tool
Sure.
that communities use. There are alternatives. There are abilities to work with businesses and offer sales tax
Sure. Yeah.
deals. There's something called a special service area that villages can enact. I'm not really sure on all the details on that, but it's just another way to work with businesses to help them improve their properties versus enacting a TIF that relies on the other taxpayers to kind of subsidize that stuff. But a lot of communities use TIF. I learned from our attorney that the TIF Act was instated in 1977, and that was truly for blighted areas, and that was made for blighted. And then in 1999, it was enhanced to include almost any other property, and that's called a conservation area. And so it's very pro-business, pro-municipality, and there's not a lot of documentation on the effects for the other taxing bodies in receiving the reduced EAV. And yes, the library is kind of a smaller agent here, but in a community, you wanna think about the community, and the TIF affects all the taxing bodies, which affect everybody's tax bill. So that's where I'll leave it. But we do need some kind of an answer
consensus here.
for the East Ogden and a direction for the Route 53.
I think the Route 53 one, I have more questions.
Yeah.
Why are the car dealerships moving? Have they been promised a TIF? And what is their plan? Are they telling the village they're moving out of Lisle if they don't get the TIF? I want to know all the backstory.
I don't know if that will be ever revealed.
Yeah, probably not. But
But good
it
question.
just seems, I don't know, I understand it for the Loch Former and all that blighted area, but I don't really see the need.
I agree.
I don't know.
I could be persuaded to support the East Ogden TIF, but I do not see any reason to support the Route 53 TIF right now as constructed.
I don't even see that as a blighted area, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is, like you said, it's like a floodplain, a wetland. It's,
It's a wrong tool for the job.
I agree. I mean,
Lacking a presentation and any answers, I don't see why we would be called upon to vote on that. It just seems like jumping over an important step. And if we're going down the path of looking at all of these TIFs, I'm not against the idea of a TIF, but looking at all of the shapes that Tatiana just put up there, there could be an impact here that could be quite large, especially for some of us who are outside of that area.
So
More
what
questions.
what I'm
And a lot of
hearing-
resident, right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that for the Route 53 one, we are not in favor of it.
No.
Without further-
Without information, we can't make a real clear cut decision without having more information.
Yeah.
So our consensus on the Route 53 one is that we are not in favor of it at this time because we do not have enough information to make the decision. For the East Ogden Avenue TIF. So a couple of things, Tatiana showed us how they talked about potentially cutting out those other parts and maybe just
It's an option.
the blighted areas, just keeping just the blighted areas and cutting out the other, and then also the idea of potentially surplus coming back. I don't know if they're gonna ask you to vote on either one of those possibilities.
I think the meeting is for discussing those possibilities.
Okay.
I do, hard to say. At the East Ogden meeting, there was a lot of concern about the size because of the impact on everybody outside of the TIF. So there were a lot of, why can't we reduce it? Why can't we reduce it?
Yeah.
Is there a way? In my conversations with the village manager, I mean, there's always a way. I'm not sure that the village is contemplating that, but if they heard from all of the taxing bodies, they might relook at it. But right now, I'm not sure they're contemplating that.
So I'm just trying to figure out what could be our statement as far as that goes for the East Ogden TIF. Do we want them to, or as our stance, we would strongly urge you to consider making that TIF area smaller, or would we like to say, we really appreciate the idea of a surplus coming back to the library with the understanding that the different taxing districts get to decide how they would use that money. That's the other part of it, right? So it's not necessarily going to be abated to the taxpayers from the different taxing bodies, but it's money that would come in that tax bodies could use.
Right, because the surplus is in addition to the levy. Levy still comes from the county, this comes from the village.
And some people might say that having a surplus like this on a yearly basis without like waiting till the end of a TIF to see if the TIF was actually used properly or whatever. Because essentially, there shouldn't be surplus.
Yeah.
Because the plan for any TIF should be like pretty clear.
Put it back in.
And they should be using the funds that way. So some people might say that the surplus coming to us annually is above and beyond what we would get by a CPI, and so it's basically monies that we shouldn't receive.
Could that be also used to offset that duration of the TIF if they have a surplus, that means at some point in time they didn't accurately account for how the taxes would increase, and as a result, they've got money that they don't have anywhere to spend, correct?
So it's I mean, I guess it's difficult. I wouldn't want to be a TIF consultant, but it must be very difficult to project.
Yes.
But I feel like more detail should be included for these I think very impactful, possibly 23-year agreements.
And correct me on that subject too, I don't believe that they really enumerated the specific improvements that they intend to make with the surplus. So I guess I would say no until you can say, we're going to, repave Ogden, we're going to put in decorative medians, we're gonna
We were talking
improve the
about
lighting.
sewers and water
sewers,
service.
street
I think
stormwater,
those were, that was the two big things that I heard, but
And some on the JRB were mentioned that is a village expense, not a TIF expense.
Right,
So
yeah, right, it's supposed to be for all of the businesses and the entirety of the TIF, correct? So it's like enhancements, access, beautification, not some stormwater mitigation for the back half of the property.
even streetlights was mentioned that is a village expense. That is something that the village should
That's fair.
budget for.
Plan for anyways.
But
it's-
a capital project.
Yeah, right,
Right.
and
Isn't that
what
county?
But
So-
it can be used in a TIF. I mean, TIF law allows
You can
for
be, got
those
it,
things.
but it should be.
It's just the village has to weigh
Yeah.
how they want to expend funds and how to receive funds.
Mhm.
And again, we're an advisory board.
Yeah.
So we just have to.
Karen, you had a question?
Isn't part of Ogden Avenue, isn't that part of the county? I mean, they're the ones,
county
so
road.
Sure
they're
is.
in charge of the lighting, not the village. It goes through the county. They tried to do that about 6 or 7 years ago. They wanted to do all this decorative lighting on Ogden. Well, it's not the village, it's the
Really?
county.
I think you're right.
And they said, I talked at length to the gentleman at the county, and he goes, how many people hit light poles? Do you know how expensive it is? It's very expensive. But yeah, that's county, it's not village.
Okay, so do we have a recommendation? Do we have a statement?
And
I think
one thing to look at too, like with the getting a percentage back every year, the lock former properties would be excluded from that.
Yes.
So if we're talking about reducing it to just the blighted area, like I don't know how much would actually come back.
I don't even know that I want it back because
Well,
that to me
yeah.
says it's not properly managed.
Right, well, and I feel like that was kind of, it was, to me, it was just like, these are possible suggestions, not that they would be both done together at the same time, just kind of like separate potential ideas. But you're right, I didn't even think about that piece, that if there is a surplus, then then what, why, right,
Well,
Right.
but we've been getting a surplus from the other ones every year and we don't abate that back to
Is
people.
it every year?
Well, the last 2 years I did look that we got.
Jack,
You know,
money.
Tatiana, I think we looked at it, it was several years in a row now that we have.
So I think, and I don't know if that's why UTI is finishing up early, that they
Yeah.
took care of everything, but, so we have been getting it and we've just taken it, so I don't know that this would be any different.
Yeah, it is legal, I mean, I did talk to the attorney about that. It's not like it's an illegal thing, it's really more of a philosophical point.
My personal stance is that I could potentially support it if I had more information specifically on what the TIF funds would be used for and the impact to the other taxpayers in the district. I could, until I have that, I say no
For East
So-
Ogden as well as.
for both of them. I could be supported if I had that information, but until I have that, I cannot even begin to say I could consider it, so that's.
Are you looking
my
for
personal-
dollar amounts?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they all
yeah, yeah.
exist, we can get it. We can't project obviously the EAV increases
Right,
and how
right.
much would need to be considered, but we can very much look at the historical records and make an estimation, and I don't have that.
I would like to see a plan of what is going to be done too, not just general
Agreed.
sewer work or whatever.
Correct, yes, hand waving. I don't want hand waving.
Forgive me if I've forgotten this, but is there a timeline? Has the village expressed why we're doing all of this right now at the same time? I mean, I may be making up for some lost time, I don't know, but
I
I
think
mean,
this was also-
that's
what
a
is
fine
the timeline
question.
on this? Yeah.
Both the East Ogden and Route 53 TIFs, those lines were drawn by the previous administration.
Okay.
So this has been months.
Sure.
And these dates of the JRB meetings have been set. So the new administration just kept moving forward
Got it.
with these plans.
Okay.
And as you witnessed or
Sure.
understood that this first East Ogden TIF failed because we wanted more information. We still want more information.
Yeah.
So I assume that this can also be delayed another 30 days if the entirety of the JRB says, no, we need more information.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at. Like, are we up against some kind of an,
No, I
or
think
is
it's,
the village coming up
my
against some
understanding
kind
was
of?
they have to meet every 30 days, is that correct, or no?
No, I think we have to meet twice a year. Statutorily, we have to, if there's a TIF, we have to meet twice a year. But when these meetings are set, if there is a no vote, you have 30 days to work with the village, come up with an amendment to whatever plan, and then you have your JRB meeting, and then you take a vote, and if it still fails, you work with the village again, you have 30 days again, and that's how it goes.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
So do we, generally speaking as a board, feel that we do not have enough information to say, yes, we are completely in favor of the TIF the way that it stands, and that we would like some additional information, more detail specifics, that kind of stuff? Like, is that how we're feeling? Generally, I'm seeing some nodding.
That's how I'm feeling, but I've done a lot of talking, so I'm
It's
trying
okay, it's helpful to hear
Okay,
what people are feeling and thinking and asking the questions, because some of that stuff I hadn't necessarily thought of, and like Karen pointing out that the county is responsible for, Ogden and, all of those pieces that you don't necessarily think about, and so the discussion is definitely helpful for me, and I'm assuming for everyone else as well, to kind of hear all of that.
Yes.
Tatiana, how would you feel about our then statement being that we do not feel that we have enough information.
So what I have is the board is interested in a comprehensive plan of what is going to be done within the TIF district. More detail than we received in the PowerPoint presentations. So until we receive that, it's a no vote.
Also, we'd like to know the impact
Yes.
of the other, the taxpayers. I think
Yes.
that, what is
Like-
that look like, the percent or what, if they
Yeah,
can
estimation.
even, and some sort of estimation. I think that's an important one. And, cause overall, like you said, we're small, but the school district is large.
And Park District,
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
county,
Adds
if
up.
the county's gonna get some kind of a,
Yeah.
Fire.
I'm curious, does
Yep.
anyone know, the other two TIFs in Lisle, they were like project specific, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
did the
TI.
developers came to the village and that's how those TIFs ended up? Or was it the village doing something like this where they're like, we have this
I think-
property and.
I don't know how it worked. These are
Yeah, those
many
are old
moons
ones.
ago. There are two different thoughts on project specific versus build it and they will come, build a TIF and they will come type of thing.
Yeah.
Most people, most taxing bodies are more in favor of working with a specific developer
Yeah.
and the TIF is the carrot and you work with that developer
Yeah.
and you make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
Versus just laying out a TIF and hoping for things to happen.
not a big fan of the field of dreams approach in that regard.
Okay, so, yes, is that our consensus for
Mhm.
And there's
I
no,
agree.
there's no feelings about reducing the TIF right now. It's just, you want more information about the plan and you want more
Yeah.
detail on the impact to
I
taxpayers.
think the
Mhm,
impact is good.
mhm.
If it's a minor impact, then we could say, maybe
To
we're
all
okay with
taxpayers,
this.
for
Right,
all
right.
bodies.
Yes.
Right,
Mhm.
right,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if it's a huge impact here and a huge
Mhm,
impact there, then
mhm.
we're gonna have to think about it, so we can't,
Right,
not necessarily know right
And
now, but it could be.
if they are if there are project plans for that entire area.
Tell us,
Yeah,
you got a
yeah.
grand vision for it, you got
Right.
people lined up to break ground.
Okay. Is that enough for you to go on?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed,
Okay,
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 all right, lively.
do we?
That's probably the most discussion we've had. It's
Yeah.
just- I've been on
That's
board.
Yeah.
Well, we can thank the village for getting us talking.
Yeah, right.
All right. So then, we've got that, so we can move on then.
Okay.
10H.
Thank you again, Tatiana,
Yes,
for
thank you.
for everything with this. It's been,
All right, so 10H.
And a journey.
yeah. It's still on, we're about halfway there. Yeah.
Item 10H acknowledges payment of earned or unused vacation time as required by Illinois Wage Payment and Collection Act 820 ILCS 115/5, a payment that shall not exceed $643.25 to be paid to Matt Swed. And then before we move on to 10I, if there is no objection, I'd like to move item 12 up so that trustees can provide their comments, and then we can move to executive session to be able to complete item 10I.
I have a general question about the order of this.
Yes,
We're doing 10I before 11,
no, I wanna do 12, the opportunity for trustee comments.
right?
I wanna do that first,
Okay.
then we have to go to, we need to do
11.
11. to go to
Okay, got it. So
executive
12,
session,
12, then
and
11, then 10I.
10I would be the
Got
last
it.
one where we would.
Sorry.
It's just a formatting because it's
Yes.
under new business.
No, I understand. I thought you were saying 12 and then back to 10I and then to 11. So I'm good now. Thank
12,
you. 12.
11, 10I.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so then we will go to 12, opportunity for trustee comments. Okay, I will go first. Number one, I'd like to thank the director again for the presentation that she put together about the TIFs and for all of the work that she's been putting into that. I know it's been a lot of additional meetings and discussions and research and all of that to help keep us informed, and I really appreciate that, so thank you for that. I wanted to also mention the summer read kickoff party and how great that was. So thank you, Director Weinstein, Assistant Director Savage. It was really great, and I actually wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it being in the north parking lot because it hasn't been there for a long time. But I actually really enjoyed it in that setting, and so it was nice to be there. So I really appreciated that, enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to the Kingston lot planning and where we're heading with that and seeing what the next step is. So I think our first step to with today with agreeing about doing Terra that's going to lead us in the right direction. And I'm also very much looking forward to our next strategic planning committee meeting on Monday. It's been a while since we've met, and I'm excited for Trustee Pele to see what that's all about and how we're working on that. So that's it. That's where I'm at, and so that I will pass it off to Vanessa.
Yeah, so thank you so much for all of this stuff on the tips and for talking it through with me on Monday, because it's a lot of information and I feel like it's not very clear and it takes a lot of reading to get through that. So thank you, I appreciate it. And great job on the summer read party. The foam pit, when we got there, like all the teenagers I was with were like, yeah, no, and went inside, but by the end they were all in the foam pit. So it was a big hit, even if they weren't sure at first.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give a shout out to the circulation desk. I feel like they've been really, really quick with holds. Like I put something on hold and it's there within 24 hours. And I have a friend who had a book that she was waiting for to take on vacation with her. And she was watching when it was due back, and then she was worried that it wasn't going to be in time, but it was like, must have been returned the day it was due, and within 24 hours they had it for her, and she had it for her vacation, so she was very excited.
Oh, that's the word along.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Josh.
Excellent work on the summer read kickoff. Had a blast. It was a lot of fun, and I've talked enough tonight, so that's all. Thank you.
You used all your words for the day?
And then some.
All right, Liz.
I have to echo everybody's comments. Summer read was great, thank you very much. And also the discussion on the TIF and the work you put into that, thank you very much. And thank the whole board for the discussion, it was great. That's it.
Thank you. Laura.
All right. I unfortunately had a family conflict and was not able to attend the summer read party, and I love attending those parties, so I was sad for multiple reasons, but I heard great things.
More to come.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to wearing my purple shirt in official capacity on July 4th. Wanted to thank Director Weinstein and our attorney for a very thorough discussion about the rules and regulations on how all of this works. And it was great to have a tour. I know I came back at another date and we had a more extensive tour, and it was great to be able to meet a lot of the staff, particularly a lot of the people who work behind the scenes that your average patron and community member won't see. Now I know how all the magic happens. So thank you so much. Looking forward to strategic planning as well next week.
Thank you. Karen.
Thank you for the presentation on the TIF. It was very, very good.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Debbie.
Okay, I reiterate my thanks and a great kickoff party. It was wonderful. Kind of piggybacking on your thing about the circulation, I also heard from one of my senior friends who was so happy he got the new Mel Robbins book. He thought he was never going to get it. He said, I was like 28th, and then all of a sudden they called me and it was ready. And so I said, so very making people happy, so that's awesome. And the Hokusai is really great. I mean, as I'm hearing so much positive feedback at the Park District from my seniors. Yeah, they're really loving it. I thought the presentation was great. We've already done a little field trip up there to see it. One of my ladies is hanging on Main Street. Her dragon. Yeah. So that's really exciting. So so thank you for all the time you put into that. I know you were going to hope to not be as involved, and it's hard. Leaders are leaders, no matter what. And you just you did a great job.
I think everybody
it's really cool. It really has exceeded my expectations.
Mine
I
as
think.
well.
Yeah, it was. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then we will move to item number 11, which is the executive session. May I have a motion and a second to go into an executive session? And whoever makes the motion, please read the entire statute.
I move to go into executive session 5 ILCS 120/2C1 for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel or the public body to determine its validity.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Emily Swister,
Aye.
Vanessa Berry,
Aye.
Debbie Bryan,
Aye.
Josh Martin,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Laura Bailey,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bathroom break, pause, yes, ma'am. It is 9:27 PM and we are back in open session and we will attend to agenda item 10-I to set the director's salary for fiscal year 25-26. I need a motion and a second.
I move to approve the director's salary of $148,737 with a one-time bonus of $2,000 for fiscal year 25-26.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Who did you get for the second on that?
Liz, they were like immediately like.
Take care.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, Karen Larson.
Okay, motion second. Discussion.
None.
Okay, roll call please.
Emily Swister,
Aye.
Vanessa Berry,
Aye.
Debbie Bryan,
Aye.
Josh Martin,
Aye.
Karen Larson,
Aye.
Laura Bailey,
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Okay, motion passes. Last item on the agenda is to adjourn. May I have a motion and a second?
I move to adjourn.
I
Second.
Yeah,
One of us got it, one of us seconded.
One first, one second.
Discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned at 9:10 PM. Thank you.